Hello friends, this time I'm gonna do a kind of a different video than the rest of them because a video came across my feed. It's by a fellow countryman and musician called Michael Pauris, who is a great virtuoso player in bouzouki, guitar. He plays piano, bass, he plays many different instruments. I've known him since 2010, which was when I first presented my first work, which was a cover song called Bouzouki and Whiskey by Yannis Sporostomateou, a Greek great bouzouki player. And at the same time, he presented his own, so we spoke in comments, and I've known him ever since. We're not friends, we've never met, but I see his work from time to time. It comes across my social media feed. And this time, he uploaded something like an audio article. I'm gonna upload the link down here so you can see it yourself and hear it, which is called Why Society Cannot Tolerate Virtuosos. And it's kind of like his own thoughts regarding this special subject. Of course, nobody can deny Michael, his technique. He's an amazing player, jaw-dropping technique. But there are many people who probably have negative stuff to say regarding, I don't know, his style. Perhaps they're not touched by his music, or they have differences with something else. And anyways, I'd like to analyze the text, the passage, the article. First of all, I translated in English, so I'm gonna read it for you, and then we're gonna analyze it together and see if we can deduct some useful deductions, some useful answers and questions maybe, I don't know. So he says, the virtuoso does not disturb because they play well, they disturb because they reveal. They reveal limits, comparisons, illusions. They reveal the gap between what we are and what we could be. And this gap is unbearable for most societies. The term virtuoso was born in music, but the phenomenon is not limited there. It appears in every field where a person surpasses what is expected and established, whether they hold an instrument, a tool, or an idea. Society can tolerate the skilled professional because the skilled professional confirms the system. It cannot tolerate the virtuoso, however, because the virtuoso challenges it simply by existing. The first encounter with the virtuoso always causes astonishment, a pause in breath, a brief "that's impossible." If that pause turns into admiration, progress is born. If it turns into fear, rejection is born. When the human mind cannot understand, it seeks defense, and the easiest defense is dismissal. It's not real, it's unnecessary, it has no substance, not because these are true, but because they are comforting. When denial of existence no longer works, the strategy changes. You no longer deny that it exists, you deny that it matters. This is where deconstruction is born, not as criticism, but as self-protection. Deconstruction does not say it isn't good, it says it isn't necessary. And that is more dangerous because it pretends to be rational while hiding fear. The virtuoso will almost always be compared to the past, to the legends, to great names, not to honor history, but to confine them to the present, to indirectly say you don't think that you're something special. Yet the comparison itself reveals the opposite. When you compare someone to the greatest, you have already placed them beside them. When doubt, deconstruction, and comparison fail, indifference arrives. Indifference is not neutrality, it is silent submission without courage. It is the stage where the virtuoso has already won, but society refuses to admit it, so it pretends not to see while secretly watching through the keyhole. The virtuoso does not ask for acceptance, applause, or agreement. They ask for space to exist, and that is precisely what society struggles to give. Because the space the virtuoso occupies is not symbolic, it's real, and it removes the excuse of mediocrity. It removes the ability to hide behind good enough. Society cannot tolerate the virtuoso, not because they are excessive, but because they are precise. They make no mistakes, they leave no margins, they offer no comforting illusions. And that is why, no matter how much it fights them, it needs them, because without them, everything looks the same. And when everything looks the same, there is no reason to evolve. As always, the conformity of the many becomes the suffocation of the few. Alright, that was it. Let me start by saying the obvious, that many people know who Michael Pauris is, both here in Greece, also abroad. He's played with Aldi Meola live, he's played in great stages in Europe. I don't know if he's ever been to America. He's worked with legends such as Billy Sheehan in the bass recently, and they all praised him. And there are many, many people who admire him. So first of all, I'm not sure that society cannot tolerate him. Also, Michael, I've seen you in many, many different media, like television, with Kostas Hardavelas, a Greek journalist in the past, with famous singers like Gerasimos Andreatos. I've seen Akis Golfidis, one of the greatest music engineers here in Greece, praise you. You've played with Eleni Dimou, a great singer. So I'm not sure that society does not tolerate a virtuoso, especially if we're talking about you. Let me start by saying what a virtuoso is. For me, it's someone whose mastery is so high that it redefines what's considered possible. It makes the ordinary skill look insufficient, and it forces other people to confront their limits. That is true. Now, virtuosos through the years have been names like Niccolò Paganini, who was so technically advanced that people believed he had made a deal with the devil. Society kind of demonized him, but he had lots of fame during his lifetime. Franz Liszt, perhaps the first real rock star of classical music in the piano. Mozart was one of the virtuosos, one of the greatest, of course. And in the more recent years, you can say that Jimi Hendrix was a virtuoso, Johann Sebastian Bach, Frédéric Chopin, Prince, Yo-Yo Ma, Vincent van Gogh in painting. Some of them, it's true that they didn't gain recognition through their lifetime. So, like Vincent van Gogh maybe, so he sold almost nothing while he was alive. But on the other hand, others like Yo-Yo Ma, he brought virtuosity to global audiences, and he's one of the most well-known and respected throughout the globe. Same goes for Prince, for example. So some of them were kind of ignored or put like Bach, Mozart or Van Gogh, and actually Bach wasn't exactly poor. He was working all the time through the church, and he had 20-something children to feed, so I guess he wasn't really poor. But there are others, of course, who were a little bit more feared or attacked, like Beethoven maybe. So there is a kind of a historical pattern, but in the latest years, there are also many, many examples of virtuosos through the years, like Andrea Segovia, legend of the classical guitar. He lived long, he was famous, he was wealthy, and he was revered. Django Reinhardt in gypsy jazz, and he was a gypsy player as well, and there was a lot of racism back in the day. So he was famous throughout Europe, across Europe. He was also famous in America. He recorded constantly, he played with the top musicians, and he was financially successful. So he was recognized by audiences in real time. The Rosenberg Trio in the more recent years. Yngwie Malmsteen in the metal and hard rock world. He's a platinum selling artist. Everybody knows him. His speed and precision were celebrated, not dismissed. So society was ready to reward his extreme technical mastery. Steve Vai, Joe Satriani, John Petrucci from Dream Theater. These are all players with global fame, with technical legend status. They do sold out tours worldwide, and they're respected across all guitar genres, also across all genres generally, I would say. So I think there's a clear shift in modern times towards the admiration of the society towards the virtuosos. Perhaps in earlier societies, sometimes they were crushed, or if they were too ahead of their time, they were hunted down, or ignored maybe. But in modern culture, especially in music, societies have learned to celebrate extreme excellence. Now, let me talk a little bit about the article itself. First of all, you position yourself as exceptional, which you are, misunderstood, maybe, morally superior to society, I'm not sure about that, and as a victim of other people's inferiority. This is a pattern, and it's a common pattern, and there's a lot of defensive thinking in there. I don't know why you feel like you experience lack of recognition, because you have a lot of recognition. But okay, let's start with what you say. First of all, you claim that the virtuoso disturbs because he reveals painful gaps in others. And there's a problem here, because it's like you're mind reading, you're projecting your thoughts to the total society. There is zero evidence that most people react to excellence with existential pain. In reality, people admire high skills. We see it in sports stars, in musicians, surgeons, athletes. They're all celebrated, they're all recognized, and especially in musicians, all the, if you scroll TikTok or YouTube Reels and stuff, you'll see millions and billions of views in amazing players throughout the world. We usually seek out excellence voluntarily. We pay money to see and witness mastery. So I think that in this part over here, you're projecting some insecurities onto society. You assume that if they don't praise you, they must be feeling threatened. And that's a psychological leap. It's not a fact. Claim number 2, you say that society tolerates the skilled but rejects the virtuoso. First of all, I think that's a false dichotomy. There is no real world line between skilled and virtuoso. These are frequently the same. Skill exists on a spectrum, and historically virtuosos are the most rewarded. They're top paid musicians, celebrated athletes, Nobel winners, famous innovators, perhaps not so much in Greece as it would be if you would live, I don't know, in the US or something. But this is the situation. So society amplifies excellence. That's my view on the subject. Next claim, people reject what they don't understand. That's a kind of an oversimplification of human behavior. Sometimes unfamiliar things are resisted. So if you walk the street and you see an alien, strange being in front of you, you won't instantly admire it. You might feel frightened. But in art and music especially, people constantly embrace the things that they don't really understand. Most fans don't understand jazz harmony or classical composition or guitar technique or vocal physics, but they yet still love and admire all this stuff. So lack of understanding does not equal rejection at the same time. I think that this psychological shortcut is kind of lazy. Next claim, number 4. Criticism is actually fear in disguise. Okay, here there's an emotional reasoning fallacy. You assume that if someone criticizes you, it must be out of fear. This is like a cognitive distortion. In reality, the criticism can be many things. It can be difference in taste preferences, and that's the most important thing. Quality judgment. It might be out of boredom. Not all brains function in the same way and are able to listen to the same complexities in music. Many times it's hard for people to listen to a million notes a second, the way you play, and understand it and feel connected to it. So they might get bored. It happens. Same thing happens with other virtuosos. The average person, for example, here in Greece, a young guy around 20 years old who listens to pop music and trap music cannot feel connected by listening to Steve Vai, for example, or Yngwie Malmsteen or André Segovia. There's also a mismatch with the audience. There are legitimate flaws here in this kind of thinking. Not all negative feedback is trauma-based, in my opinion. This belief is common in narcissistic thinking because it converts every critique into proof of superiority. I'm not saying that you are a narcissist. I'm saying that this is the way narcissists think. Next claim, comparison to legends is meant to diminish. I think it's completely backwards, and you say it later on. In culture, comparison to greats is a sign of respect. No one compares a mediocre musician to Bach or Hendrix or any other of the greats. The comparison means that you are operating at a very, very high level. And this is how our brains work. We compare different stuff. If we compare an athlete who's lifting weights, we might compare him to the greats to understand how many kilos he's lifting, to understand what category he's fitting in. So don't interpret this as an attack, because it's not what it is. Sometimes this also feels like a projection. Okay, usually if people compare you to the greats, it's out of admiration. Next claim: indifference in society secretly is admitting defeat. Okay, here I think that most of the time indifference simply means that people are not genuinely interested in what we're doing. It's not everything is a psychological war. This is kind of an egocentric bias. You're assuming that your work occupies far more mental space in others' minds than it actually does. Most audiences move on from something that they hear and they don't like, not because they're threatened. Nobody thinks like this, but because they feel nothing. That's the most probable thing, and it's perfectly normal in art, in all kinds of art. You can't expect everybody to feel connected to what you're doing. Next claim: the virtuoso doesn't ask for applause, only space. Okay, but this is contradicted by the entire essay. So the whole text is kind of a long complaint about lack of recognition, or kind of a war inflicted on you and your technique, which means that you absolutely want validation, but you're framing it as just wanting to exist, and that would be very, very noble, but it's kind of a rhetorical trick. Anybody can exist. You can exist in your own space. You don't even have to be outside and playing. You should be outside and playing because you have great talents and great technique, but you can exist everywhere. I don't think that any artist is not asking for the applause. All artists want their work to touch people's hearts and minds. Not everybody's, but as many as possible. Next claim: society protects mediocrity. Okay, there's a problem here because this is contradicted by all of human history. We have cultures that literally revolve around celebrating the top performance. For example, in Olympic champions, famous musicians, movie stars, best-selling authors, top scientists. Mediocrity in general is not protected. Mediocrity is ignored usually. Excellence is what rises. And I think that you've risen and you will keep rising. So I'm not sure why you feel that mediocrity is protected. If anything, society is obsessed with standout talents more than mediocrities. So in general, this essay uses a classic trope, that this misunderstood genius versus the blind masses. And this is a motif that appears constantly in, writing, in artists' journals who might be frustrated though, and in self-mythologizing memoirs. It feels deep, but is often emotional storytelling. It's not reality. It simplifies the world into noble individual versus the cruel society. Again, my view is that your thesis collapses immediately if you look at reality. Most virtuosos were celebrated, paid, were influential, and were sought after. Some were ignored in specific eras, but that's about economics, it's about trends, it's about access, it's not about society fearing excellence. When an artist isn't rewarded, it's usually because of either limited audience appeal of a niche style, which is not for, you know, the masses, out of poor marketing sometimes, weak emotional connection to the artist's work. It's because of bad timing sometimes, it happens. It can be of oversupply of talent or simply taste. It's not because an artist is too great to handle. So generally, I don't think there's any reason for you to externalize and blame others for their views. I see some grandiosity in your text. I see persecution narrative, emotional reasoning, and other kind of stuff. But I think that you're a very, very intelligent and talented person, and you will do just fine. And you will reach your audience, you will grow it bigger, so you don't have to worry too much about this kind of stuff. A good question for you would be, do the people feel connected to my work? So this is not about technique. It's about what you write and how you communicate it to the people around you. I don't know, it's just a suggestion. So that was it for today from me. I hope I gave you guys some food for thought. Check out Michael Pauris. He's an amazing player with astonishing world-class technique. Again, one of the best that have ever been. I'm not a fan of his music most of the time because it's not for me, not because of either envy or I don't know, fear of something. But I feel that he feels that he's not as recognized as he should be. I wish all the best. I hope you'll get the recognition you feel you deserve over the years. I think you're doing a great job. Keep on doing it. The way you feel is more proper to yourself and the people around you. That was it for today. I hope you liked this video. Take care. See you next time. Bye bye.